Welcome to the Newsome MMA betting podcast, partnered with Concussion Pro 1, the world's first dedicated concussion supplement. I'm your host as always, Newsome, and today I've decided to drop a breakdown podcast for KSW 45, which takes place next Saturday, October 6th at the SSE Arena, Wembley in London, England. This is a card I'm so excited for, man. KSW is one of the best promotions in the world, and the production value of their events is just unbelievable. Seriously, if you've never watched footage of a KSW event, I'd highly recommend you to go and check some out. KSW 39 Coliseum had the second ever largest attendance in MMA history, with nearly 60,000 people in the arena that night. The weigh-ins have live heavy metal bands playing music throughout. It's just outstanding stuff, and I could really go on. But what makes this even sweeter for me is I'm going to be covering the event cage side, and I cannot wait. So on to the event. We have the KSW heavyweight title on the line, with Filip de Vries being the first ever KSW heavyweight champion outside of Poland to defend the belt on home soil. We have the KSW welterweight title on the line, with du Plessis defending his title against Soldić, which is actually a rematch of their last fight too. And we have the first round of the KSW middleweight tournament for the vacant middleweight title. So man, this event just has it all. And just before we start, I'd just like to remind you all that the Premium Bets membership options from Newsome MMA are available and on the Newsome MMA website. You have the options of a standard, bronze, silver and gold membership. And these memberships provide cheaper prices per fight card for those who commit to slightly longer terms, opposed to purchasing my picks individually per week. You can find all of these membership options at newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. That's newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. So without further ado, let's get into these breakdowns. And in the first fight of the evening, we have Sloane from the UK taking on Akop Szostak from Poland. Now, this fight's actually a short notice fight. Szostak was supposed to be fighting John Smith, I believe. Sloane stepped in after Smith withdrew. And man, this is going to be an absolute barn burner, and one that I don't think is going to last very long at all. Both guys hit really hard. Both guys have been finished as well by a lot of knockouts. So Sloane, out of his 5 losses, he's been knocked out 4 times. For Szostak, out of his 2 losses, he's been knocked out both times. Out of the 3 wins for Szostak, 2 have come by knockout. Out of 8 wins for Sloane, 6 have come by knockout. So man, these 2 fighters love to stand in the pocket. They love to trade. They love to throw bombs. And to be honest with you, it's a difficult fight to predict, because it's going to be that first shot wins. And for me, I have to give a prediction for you guys, and for me, I'm going with the guy from England, Sloane, and the only reason for that is I think he's just fought the slightly better competition, and you know, with Alessio Sakara, Carlos Mamola, I know both those guys beat Sloane and finished him, but I just feel that having an edge in experience, whether that be a win or a loss, I think is an advantage. But really, it is more of just a guess at this point, because, like I say, they're both big dudes, they're both at light heavyweight, and that one punch is going to end the night. And trust me, they both swing bombs. So yeah, the prediction for this is Sloane to win via knockout. And in the next fight of the night, we've got another really good fight, and one I'm really excited for. It's also another short notice fight as well. So we've got McSweeney fighting Thiago Silva. Now, this fight is going to be at heavyweight as well. So this is Thiago Silva stepping up to heavyweight. And it's actually Thiago Silva that stepped up on short notice as well. So originally, McSweeney is supposed to have been fighting the KSW regular Michał Andrzejczak. Andrzejczak pulled out with an injury, and up stepped Thiago Silva to make his KSW debut. Now, this is Thiago Silva that's fought most of his career at light heavyweight. He actually stepped down to middleweight for his last fight in ACB. And now he's jumping completely the opposite direction and going straight up to heavyweight. So it's not going to be a secret which guy is going to be the bigger guy in there. You know, McSweeney is a huge guy, and he is going to be much bigger than Thiago Silva in there. Now, the positives from Thiago Silva's point of view is, with this fight being on short notice, there's going to be no weight cut for him. He's going to be able to go in there without putting his body through any stress, and trying to lose the pounds. He's going to be fresh. With him being the smaller fighter, he's going to be quicker as well, which I feel that he's going to have a great advantage over James McSweeney. What Thiago Silva needs to do in this fight, though, is just not get tied up, because if McSweeney closes that distance and gets Silva in the clinch, I just don't see a scenario where Silva can have success in that spot. And likewise, if he gets taken down as well, with James McSweeney on top, I just don't see Thiago Silva being able to do too much from bottom, and I think it'll actually hurt him a lot as well, because Thiago Silva will be trying to get up. He won't want to be getting smothered on the mat. He won't want to be taking bombs on the bottom from James McSweeney, and if he can't get up, it's just going to expend a gas tank. And I know that Silva hasn't had, like I've already mentioned, a weight cut, so his cardio will be decent. But how long can you stay on the bottom with a guy of James McSweeney's size on top of you without that really starting to hurt your gas tank? Now, for me, James McSweeney's got he's a bit chinny. He's lost 16 times and 10 of those have come by knockout. So, but again, this is a heavyweight, and I don't think you can really weigh too much into that at heavyweight, because every guy hits like a truck, and every guy can be put away. Thiago Silva isn't that natural heavyweight, so will he have that natural power to be able to test that chin of James McSweeney? Ultimately, I'm not sure. But I've got Thiago Silva to win this fight, and like I say, it's a fight that he's going to have to be very careful of, because the bigger heavyweight, the harder hitter is going to be James McSweeney. So Thiago Silva is going to have to be very, very careful inside there. But ultimately, I'm going with Thiago Silva to win the fight, just purely on experience. He is a veteran. He's fought all over the world and at the highest level in the UFC as well. And I think he's going to have to do this by decision. I very highly, I know I've just said, James McSweeney's got a couple of chin issues, but I honestly don't see Silva testing that too much here, because to test that, he's got to get inside, he's got to start winging bombs, and that just opens him up to play right into the wheelhouse of James McSweeney. And I just think if Thiago Silva's smart and he really does want to win this fight, he can't do that. He's got to stay on the outside. He's got to use his speed and movement to get in and out before McSweeney can get a hold of him or get anything off himself. And Thiago Silva's got to do that for 15 minutes. He can't start messing inside the clinch and stuff with James McSweeney. So it's going to be a tough fight for Silva. It's going to have to be a fight that is really measured from him. A fight that he plays really smartly, and I'm gonna go with Silva. I think he does fight that fight, and I think he beats James McSweeney via decision. And in the next fight of the night, we've got Max Nunes versus Wagner Prado. Now, these awesome fights just don't stop, guys. This is another really, really good fight. We've got Max Nunes, 17-5 veteran, fighting out of All Stars in Sweden, a camp well renowned for fighters such as Alexander Gustafsson. He's coming off a 2-fight losing streak, though. He got finished by Batraz Agnayev and Luke Barnett, both in ACB. And he's facing Wagner Prado, a fighter that, ex-UFC. He's slightly older than Max Nunes. Packs a lot of power in his punches. He's coming off a 2-fight winning streak against Armando Cecel and Chris Fields. Chris Fields, obviously KSW 44, not so long ago, only back in June. So it's a fight that I feel is it's almost going to be grappler versus striker for me, because although Max Nunes, he's got 10 wins by knockout out of his 17 wins overall, he's also got a decent wrestling game as well, and he did show that in parts against Batraz Agnayev, a Russian guy that, I was surprised to see him shooting early. He did end up getting swept in that fight and ultimately finished, but His shot was great. His time that he did spend in top control was pretty good as well. And he also tried to use the same game plan against Luke Barnett. It just didn't pan out that way. You know, there was a lot of clinch work, but even when it was in the clinch against the cage, Max Nunes was probably winning the round, and then he just got caught by a big right hand from Barnett and ultimately knocked out. Whereas Wagner Prado, he's 13 wins out of his 14 overall wins have come by knockout. The guy packs huge power. He trains out of Team Nogueira and Evolution Thai. And yeah, he's got a good camp behind him, but he's susceptible to getting taken down. I feel, you know, Chris Fields got him down. Chris Fields spent a lot of time in that first round on top, ultimately won that round. I feel that Max Nunes is going to have seen that. Max Nunes will want to employ that same game plan as he has in his last two fights against Wagner Prado. But the thing is with Prado, I don't think his ground game's awful at all. I do think he has got something from bottom. He's also, you know, I said he is susceptible to getting taken down, but those takedowns don't come easy. He does offer resistance, which will ultimately drain the gas tank of whoever's trying to take him down, because he isn't easy to take down, but the fact is he can be. So I feel that his takedown defence offering some resistance is definitely a positive for him. And like I say, he's not totally awful on the bottom. He is trying to work. He doesn't just lay on his back, accept position, and ultimately accept strikes. You know, he's trained a lot, like I've said, with Team Nogueira, so he's going to have good experience from some good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artists from that camp. So I feel that he has something to offer from bottom if Max Nunes is to take him down. Now, how I see this fight playing out is one of two ways, and it all depends on Max Nunes. So I think if Max Nunes comes out there and starts striking with Prado, it's going to be a very early night for him, because I think Prado will catch him. I think Prado hits harder than Luke Barnett. I think Wagner Prado hits harder than Agnayev, although Agnayev's finish did come from ground and pound on the mat rather than, you know, dropping him and knocking him out on the feet. But I feel that Nunes is up here against a guy that hits very, very hard. So if Nunes comes out and tries to strike with him without even engaging and grappling for a couple of minutes, I think that Prado's going to knock him out. But I think Nunes isn't going to do that. I think Nunes is going to come out, and I think he is going to look for an early takedown. And I think in that scenario, we see a very similar fight to the Wagner Prado and Chris Fields fight. I think Nunes might have some success on top, on the mat, but ultimately all fights start standing. And for me, I can't see, I'm struggling to see a scenario where Max Nunes doesn't get hit by a big shot, and whether that be him coming in and Wagner Prado hitting him with an uppercut, you know, as he's ducked down to take his shot, or hits him with a solid elbow in the clinch or something. I feel that if Max Nunes has been knocked out by Luke Barnett and by the ground and pound of Agnayev, and no disrespect to those two guys, I just don't think they hit as hard as Prado. So yeah, I am struggling to see a scenario where Max Nunes beats Prado. I just feel that he's not going to submit him, and I don't think the fight's going to go 15 minutes, go the 3-round distance. So I've got Wagner Prado to defeat Max Nunes via knockout. And in the next fight of the night, we've got a good fight at £155 in the lightweight division. We've got Alfie Davis fighting out of the UK against Leszek Krakowski fighting out of Poland. Now, I'll be honest, it's a fight that I don't know too much about either guy, but I know enough to be able to give you guys a breakdown and ultimately a prediction as well. So both guys really well-rounded. They both got a decent amount of knockouts, submissions and decisions as well. So it's split quite evenly across the method of victories. Alfie Davis 10-2, Krakowski 12-1. Now, like I say, it's really good matchmaking, because it's sort of one of those fights where you don't know whether you're going to see a knockout, whether you're going to see a submission, or whether the fight's going to go the distance and it's going to go to the scorecards. Now, Let's start with Krakowski from Poland. He's built really well. He's an aggressive fighter. He will come forward. He will try and press his opponents. He'll mix in strikes with his clinch work, and then ultimately, if the takedown's there, he can look for that as well. Alfie Davis, on the other hand, primarily a striker from what I've seen, but again, he does have ground game. He's got submissions on his record, and I just feel that. The striking of Alfie Davis in this fight is going to be the difference. He's got a wicked kick. He's got multiple finishes with kicks, whether it be body shots, whether it be head kicks, or even working the low kicks on the legs and ultimately breaking his opponent down strategically inside the cage. And I think that's what's going to happen in this fight. I think Krakowski is going to be the aggressor. I think he's going to be the one coming forward, and I think on the counter, Alfie Davis is going to start winging kicks to the legs to slow him down, to the body if it's open, and then once sort of Krakowski's got in his head that these kicks are coming low and medium, I think he can then start trying to catch him off guard with the high kick as well to the head. So I think that really Alfie Davis in this fight can bamboozle Krakowski, so to speak, in just making him overthink in the cage. And I say this time and time again, when you're a fighter and inside that cage, I think one of the worst things that can happen is you're starting to overthink things. Of course you've got to think inside there. You've got to be mindful of what's happening. Your fight IQ's got to be there. But I think when you start to overthink things like, oh, okay, when's his next shot coming? Is that coming low? Is it coming medium? Is it coming high? Is it going to be a kick? Is it going to be a punch? Or is he going to try and take me down? I think when a fighter starts asking himself those questions in the minimal time that is in the cage, in close quarters, his offense then starts to have an effect, because he's just thinking too much about what his opponent's doing. And I ultimately feel that Alfie Davis is going to have that mental edge inside the cage in regards to like I've said, making Krakowski overthink. So I think Krakowski is going to be the aggressor. I think Davis will start getting some kicks off, which will then start slowing Krakowski down. Then Alfie Davis can start moving forward himself and start to land mount some offence moving forward for himself as well. So I don't know whether it's going to finish though. It all depends on the timings of it. How much does Alfie Davis move backwards before he can start moving forwards and mounting some offence himself? It's going to be tough to gauge. So I'm going to go with Alfie Davis to win this fight by decision on the judges' scorecards. And moving on to the next fight, we've got the first fight of the middleweight tournament that I spoke to you about earlier. So this middleweight tournament is for the vacant middleweight championship after Mamed Khalidov vacated his belt. So we've got the MMA veteran ex-UFC fighter. We've got Scott Askham fighting out of the UK against the Polish Marcin Wójcik. Now, this fight is really interesting. I interviewed Scott earlier in the week, so I'll make some similar points as what I made back then as well. With Marcin Wójcik, his last fight was actually at heavyweight. Scott did point out on the interview that fight was at short notice. He stepped in for that fight, so he was sort of roughly around the light heavyweight weight, but he did weigh in as a heavyweight. Now that leads me to the next point. Wójcik is normally a light heavyweight. He's fought light heavyweight all his career, and now he's stepping down to middleweight. So what's that? If he can make weight at heavyweight on short notice, it does tell me that he's got a lot of pounds to cut to get down to middleweight. So watching tape on him, I'm sort of thinking that he might pace himself more than what he did in his previous fights because of the weight cut, especially if the weight has been coming off slow as well. So it's a little bit unsure of. And you always get this when a fighter moves up and down a weight class. There's always red flags. There's always question marks on how they're going to perform. Are they going to be stronger? Are they going to be weaker? Is the cardio going to be better or worse? And I just feel that those sort of questions can be asked, and rightfully so, in this fight as well. Now Scott Askham, he's a southpaw fighter, heavy kicks. To the body. We saw that in his last fight against Michał Materla. He finished in just under 70 seconds with with kicks to the body and ultimately folded Materla came as a surprise to some people, obviously not to Scott and his team. They knew exactly what they were doing inside of there. But Materla was a big name, man, and Scott to take him out in 70 seconds was just unbelievable. Now with Wójcik, I don't think Wójcik's going to want to stand with Scott. I think he's going to feel a couple of those body kicks from Scott, and I think ultimately once he starts feeling them, he'll have watched the Materla fight as well. He'll have seen Materla fall to the kicks, so that'll be conscious in Wójcik's mind when he's fighting Scott inside the cage. Now Wójcik's got a really good reactive takedown as well. We've seen it across multiple fights. He has got a quick shot straight to the legs to take his opponents down, and he ultimately does have decent top control as well. Even when he's on bottom, I've seen him sweep and reverse opponents to remain topside. So it's going to be a tricky fight. Now, I do favour Askham in this fight. I think that even if Wójcik does take him down and does manage to get him down, Askham's got a really, really underrated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. I think, if I remember rightly, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt as well. So absolutely no slouch on the ground. And it's really underrated and not many people know it. And that's just because not many people see it. Scott likes to stand up. He likes to strike. And I think if Wójcik takes him down, he's not going to have an easy time on bottom. Scott will not lay there. He will not accept position. He'll either be looking to stand up or he'll be flinging the legs up to try and catch a submission on bottom. Now, that all depends. If that is the fight in a nutshell, it all depends on how the judges at KSW score that fight. But ultimately, I do see Scott being able to withstand some takedown attempts, and if he does, if that's been a bad cut for Wójcik, will that start draining his cardio, like I've already mentioned in a previous fight? Who knows? But then if Scott is taken down, I do think he can stand up as well. I think there'll only be so long that he's throwing submissions up before he does think, right, I've got to get back up to my feet. And I think on the feet with the striking battle, I just think Scott's the more diverse striker. I think he hits hard as well. He's also never been finished, so for Wójcik to put Scott out in this fight, I think it's going to be a big ask for him. I ultimately think that Wójcik has. I think if Wójcik spends time on top side on Scott on the mat. Even if Scott is throwing up submissions, I've just got a funny feeling that the judges will be basing the scoring system on who's controlling on top, which would be Wójcik. So, in my opinion, Scott has to avoid that takedown game. So, if Wójcik spends a lot of time in 2 rounds in top side on Scott, I think that he's going to win a decision. But ultimately, I don't see him spending that much time over the course of 15 minutes on top of Scott. I think Scott will get his striking game off, get his striking game going quickly. I think he'll start peppering the shots to the legs and to the body, using his jab well. He's got a nice straight left as well. And I think if Scott can sort of get maybe halfway through round 1 and there's been no takedown attempt from Wójcik, but he's landed a lot of shots as well, I think the tank of Wójcik might start to take effect, and then if there is any takedown attempts from Wójcik on Scott, I think that Scott might be able to defend them from maybe a little bit of a depleted Wójcik. But it's an interesting fight. It is going to be, does Wójcik stand with Scott or not? I think if he does, he loses the fight. I think like I've already mentioned, if he spends a lot of time topside, Wójcik will win the fight. But ultimately, I'm going with Scott Askham in this fight. I think he's fought better competition. He's been at the high level. I think the difference in striking is much larger than the difference in both of the ground games. So I give Scott a really huge edge in the striking, and I think he's going to get it done with a late finish as well. I think it might take a couple of rounds to really wear Wójcik down, but ultimately I've got Scott Askham to win a late decision via TKO. And in the next fight of the night, we've got the second half of this middleweight tournament. We've got Damian Janikowski against Michał Materla, and this is a really, really intriguing fight for me because we've got Damian Janikowski that's bronze medalist, I believe, at the Olympics in wrestling. So he comes from a huge wrestling background. But if you watch his fights, he comes out aggressive. He's really worked on his striking. His striking's come on leaps and bounds. And he actually, to me, seems to use his wrestling more of a plan B in there. You know, comes out like a bull. Like I've already mentioned, aggressive, winging bombs. But when I say winging bombs, it's not hitting hopes. They're quite accurate as well. The guy's quite a scary dude, to be honest, because he's huge in size. He hits like a truck. He's, like I've already mentioned, 3 times now. He's super aggressive, and he's got that ridiculous wrestling background as well. Now, with all that said, he is new to MMA. He's 3-0. Not gone past halfway in round 2. 2 minutes 33 in round 2 is his longest fight. That was against Antony Chilemevsky. I've probably not pronounced that right, so I do apologise. But he's got some decent wins under his belt. That fight was a decent win. Knocking out Yannick Bahati in round 1 was a decent win for him as well. So ultimately, yeah, I don't think for a 3-0 guy in MMA, he's had an easy run by any stretch of the imagination. You know, his first opponent, Gallegos, was 8-6. Then Antony was 32-16. Yannick Bahati was 8-3. So, he's not been fed, or he's not had his record padded by any means. Now, on the other side of the cage to Damian Janikowski, we've got Michał Materla, and this is a guy that's been around for absolute years. He's a veteran. He's got some big wins under his belt. You know, he's beaten Husimar Palhares, Paulo Thiago, Martin Zavada. Also beaten the same guy that I won't pronounce his second name again, that Damian Janikowski beat him, but he beat that dude quicker than what Damian Janikowski beat him. So, you know, bit of MMA math in there. Who knows whether that's going to play a part or not? Probably. You know, I normally say MMA math doesn't. But he's also beaten Jay Silva as well. He also lost to Jay Silva, but he's beaten Kendall Grove, Rodney Wallace, James Zigic, who I think was the guy that knocked Gokhan Saki out, who was in the UFC. So, like I say, the list is endless for Michał Materla. He's got power on his feet. He's a good striker. He's got a good takedown game. He's also got a really good grappling and submission game as well. So, man, I think for me, in my opinion, this is probably the fight that I'm most interested in on the entire card. I just think that you've got this young, brute Polish up-and-comer in Damian Janikowski with a ridiculous wrestling background against another Polish brute that's an absolute veteran and got some ridiculous wins on his under his belt as well, on his record. And man, I'm just fascinated by it. The other thing to mention, you know, you look at Materla's last 2 losses, they've come to Scott Askham, who we just spoke about a minute ago. That's not a bad loss whatsoever. And the loss before that was Mamad Galadov, who is an absolute legend in the sport and has taken out so many good fighters. I'm not even going to get into reeling those names off. So how does this fight happen, and what happens in this fight, and how does both fighters go about it now? I think Damian Janikowski is going to come out quick. I don't see a difference in how he comes out the blocks to any of his previous fights. I think he tries to smother Materla. I also think he looks back at Materla's last loss against Askham, and I think that with what Askham did in that fight is he pressured Materla from the get-go. He didn't give Materla any room. He didn't let Materla really work or get into any sort of groove in his game. And I ultimately think that's how Materla ended up losing the fight. And I think if Damian Janikowski looks at it that way and comes out like a bull, really comes out aggressive, not giving him a minute to breathe, I think that's probably going to be his best path to victory in this fight. And I think in that scenario, I can see Janikowski maybe knocking him out. Or if he does hit him a couple of times and Materla's covering up well with his guard up and his chin covered, I think Janikowski might shoot in for a takedown and try and get some time topside on Materla. maybe try and ground and pound him to get the finish on the mat. But then, to me, I think that's quite risky if Janikowski does get it to the mat, because that, for me, Materla's got a huge grappling advantage over Janikowski. Yes, Janikowski's got the huge wrestling advantage. That's great to get the fight to the mat. But once a fighter's hit the mat in mixed martial arts, then your grappling really starts to come into play. And like I say, that's where I think Materla's got a huge advantage. If Materla can survive maybe 7.5 minutes in this fight, I think that he's going to win the fight, because Damian Janikowski, the pace that Janikowski fights at, I mean, he's a human being just like anybody else, and I cannot see Janikowski being able to fight 15 minutes, throwing his hardest shots, throwing his fastest shots inside a cage. I just don't see it unless he's got absolutely freakish cardio, which he might well have. You know, these wrestlers do tend to have decent cardio. You know, if he's an Olympian, he'll have been training all his life. And I know MMA is a completely different animal. So this is why I've sort of got a little bit of an uncertainty at what happens halfway through the fight if Janikowski's come out fast and hard, which I think he will. If Materla can last to that point, I think Materla can then start scoring some takedowns on himself, which I feel that Janikowski could be potentially be a fish out of water on his back. Who knows? Like I say, we've not seen it. I can only imagine with the fact that he's 3-0 and got a wrestling base, a wrestling background. We've seen it time and time again over the years in other MMA fights of these wrestlers that are great topside but not so great off the back. I think, like I've already mentioned, Materla's the better grappler, so in that scenario I could see maybe Janikowski getting submitted, and ultimately I think that's what we're looking at. I think we're looking at an early Janikowski knockout, or we're looking at a late Materla submission. And ultimately, I'm going for the young gunny. I'm going for Damian Janikowski. I think he does come out quick. I think he does bull rush. I think we see a similar Materla sort of be a bit perplexed by not being given any space or any time to move or work or get, like I've mentioned, get into his groove in the game and inside the cage. I think that once Janikowski closes that distance and removes that space for Materla to even think about what he's going to do when these hard shots are coming, I just feel Janikowski landing on the chin of Materla and ultimately putting him away. So I've got Damian Janikowski to beat Michał Materla via knockout. And in the next fight of the night, we've got a really interesting one here. We've got Erko, who is a bodybuilder fighting out of Belgium. He's 1-0 professionally in MMA, and he's fighting Paweł Mikołajuw. I think I've got that name again. These Polish names I do have a lot of difficulty with, so I apologise. Ultimately, Paweł, the other name that people know him by is Popek Monster, because he's a Polish rapper. So 3-3 professionally in mixed martial arts. He's had 6 fights to June's 1 fight that he won. And yeah, man, we've got a bodybuilder versus a Polish rapper here. You know, that's ultimately where their backgrounds lie. But inside the cage, the mixed martial artists, and I respect that. You know, they're not getting an opportunity on KSW 45 for any other reason other than the fact that they are good mixed martial artists. They're now dedicating all the time and effort into what they do, and it's going to be a really fun fight for as long as it lasts. So as you can tell by that comment, I do not see this whatsoever going the distance. I think they're both huge. They're both heavyweights. They're going to come out. They're going to come out hard. They're going to come out swinging. They're going to come out wanting to put each other's jaws into row Z. And as I mentioned earlier with the fight with Jamie Sloane and Szostak, I just think the first big shot is going to be the one that wins the fight. And who'd you go? You know, you look at the records. Popek Monster, 3-3, all 3 wins by knockout, all 3 losses by knockout. He's only been out of the first round twice. 1 he lost, he won. The last fight that he had went out of round 1. He got beat by, and again I apologise for the pronunciation, he got beat by Tomasz Oswiniski, and that's actually the same fighter that Erko Jun fought on his debut and knocked out. So a bit of MMA math for you then. Will it play a part? I don't think so. I still think the first big shot is going to win the fight. I've got to give a prediction for you guys, and I'm sorry the breakdown isn't really too technical, but it is what it is. And I'm almost I'm going to go with Popek Monster to get the win here. And the reason I'm going for Popek Monster is I just feel that, again, it comes down to experience. He has been in there with other good fighters such as Mariusz Pudzianowski, who's been around KSW for years now. And I know he lost that fight, he got knocked out, but that's not the point here. The point is he's had 6 fights in mixed martial arts. 3 of those fights have been in KSW already. He's got that experience, he's got that feel for the promotion, and I just think that when it comes to comfortability inside the cage when they're swinging bombs, I feel that Popek Monster will be a little bit more comfortable because of that experience. This is Erko Jun's second professional fight. Obviously, the first one came to somebody that Popek Monster lost to, as I've already mentioned, so that might give him a bit of confidence inside there. Ultimately, I think that when push comes to shove, I think experience is gonna take its toll. I think that Popek Monster's gonna knock Jun out in round 1. I don't think it gets out of round 1 for what it's worth. But would it surprise me if Jun won via knockout? Absolutely not. Really good fight, really fun fight. The fans are going to love both these guys. The arena's going to be rocking when they're both inside the cage. I'm really looking forward to it. I've got Popek Monster to beat Erko Jun via knockout. And in the next fight of the night, in the co-main event, we've got the welterweight title on the line. We've got Dricus du Plessis versus Roberto Soldić. Now, this is a rematch from both of their last fights. Roberto Soldić was the welterweight champion and was looking good in that fight as well until ultimately he got finished by du Plessis. Du Plessis took the belt off him, and now they're going straight back at it. And to be honest with you, I think there's 2 reasons this rematch is happening. First of all, the fight was just amazing. The fight was a really, really fun fight, start to finish. There wasn't, it was action packed. There wasn't moments of stalling or anything like that. It was just a really, really good fight to watch. And I think KSW have rebooked that in the hope that the second fight is exactly the same, which I think it will be. And second of all, and this is a really good point, and ultimately is one of the main reasons that solidifies my pick for this fight. Roberto Soldić was the guy that was in control most of the fight. He had du Plessis hurt multiple times in the first round. He was really putting it on him. Credit to du Plessis, he stayed in there. He was a warrior inside there. He stayed conscious and he fought back to knock Soldić out. And again, that's another reason why the fight was so fantastic, because we had one guy completely dominating in round 1 and really hurt his opponent, and ultimately that guy was the one that got finished in the second round. So I think that I think it's going to be another close fight until one of these guys goes out. They're both finishers. You've got du Plessis, 12 wins, not a single. In fact, he's never been to a decision. 12-1, never been to a decision. He's got 4 knockouts, 8 submissions. He got finished by a submission as well. And then you look at Roberto Soldić. He's had 16 fights, only 3 have gone to decisions. Out of 13 wins, 11 have been by knockout. So, man, again, I can't see this going to another decision. I just think one of these guys is going to get put out. And I think Soldić is going to do what he failed to do last time. I think he's going to put his hands on du Plessis. I think he is going to hurt him. I think he's going to drop him. And I think this time he might add the finishing touches to the fight and end up getting the win and reclaim his belt back from du Plessis. But it's not going to be an easy task, Du Plessis got some awesome wins under his belt. Yannick Bahati, Martin van Staden. His one loss coming to ex-UFC veteran Gareth McClellan. So, he's got a lot of good names under his belt. So it's not going to be easy to do. But I do think that the fight goes the same or starts the same way as their last fight. Except I think this time, knowing what happened last time, from Soldić's point of view, knowing what happened last time and the fact that he was so close to finishing Du Plessis and he didn't and ended up paying the ultimate price for it, and losing not only the fight but his belt, I think that's going to light a fire under his belly. And I don't think that I don't think he let Du Plessis off the hook. I genuinely thought Du Plessis was tough, but I just think he's gonna go that slightly extra yard if the same thing happens this fight, which I think it's going to. So for a prediction, I've got Roberto Soldić to beat Dricus Du Plessis via TKO, knockout, and to reclaim the welterweight title. And in the next fight of the night and in the main event of the evening, we've got Philip de Vries taking on Karol Baydorf. Now, this is an awesome fight. It's a heavyweight fight. It's for the heavyweight championship. It's also the first time a heavyweight champion in KSW outside of Poland has defended the belt on home soil as well. So that's awesome for de Vries to have this opportunity to fight in front of the home crowd. And it's a fight that's really interesting, man, because Philip de Vries is primarily a grappler. 11 wins via submission out of 15 wins overall, and he's fighting Karol Baydorf that is actually really, really well rounded, especially for a heavyweight. No disrespect to heavyweights, but you tend to either have a dominant guy with knockout power, a dominant guy with a lot of submissions on the record. But Karol Baydorf has got 15 wins, 5 by knockout, 4 by submission, and 6 by decision. So really, really well rounded, and he's got more decision wins than he does have knockouts. Now, I think in this fight, Baydorf's going to come out quite aggressive, and the reason why, and this is one worry from de Vries' point of view, he's lost 6 times and 5 have been by knockout, being hurt as well on multiple occasions in those fights. So I just think that Baydorf's going to look at that. He's going to see that's his probable largest path to victory in this fight, and that's what he's going to be going for. On the flip side, where de Vries has the huge advantages on the mat, so I think that he'll be looking to get Baydorf on the mat, especially if Baydorf comes out aggressive as well. Baydorf, he has looked okay on his back, but I think if you've got a guy the size of de Vries on top of you, with the grappling advantage, I do think that Baydorf is going to struggle from bottom to either try and get a submission off bottom or to try and stand up. It almost depends. This fight almost depends on what de Vries is going to come out and do. So some fights are like that, and I mentioned it earlier in the Max Nunes fight. It almost depends on what de Vries wants to do. If de Vries comes out and he wants to strike for a little bit with Baydorf before trying to take him down, to get a feel of the fight, to sort of work out his entries on his takedowns, I think that plays into Baydorf's path to victory quite heavily, because that gives Baydorf an opportunity to land a big shot to put de Vries out. And this is a big fight for de Vries. It's not only is he the heavyweight champion, but like I say, he's defending on home soil in front of his crowd. He's not going to go out there and want to lose this fight. He's gonna 100% be wanting to win this fight, believe me. And I just feel that's gonna make de Vries implement his game plan harder and quicker. So what I think is going to happen in this fight, like I said, either de Vries will come out and try and strike for a bit first. I don't think that'll be a smart thing to do, and I think de Vries will know that, added alongside the home crowd, the fact that he wants to retain his heavyweight title, and wants that win so badly in London, England. I think that he's going to come out and waste no time trying to get Baydorf down. I think de Vries is gonna come out. I don't think he spends any time or too much time on the feet trying to figure out his shots. I think that he might stay on the outside for a little bit, just to ease himself into the fight, but the second that distance closes, the second that knockout shot could become a potential danger, I don't think De Vries messes about. I think he tries to take Baedorf down, and I think when he takes him down the first time, I don't think he'll submit him. I think he'll have a little bit of time on top, grappling, passing, from maybe guard to half guard, just working the ground game, easing himself in. But what this will be doing while De Vries is spending time on top is this will be depleting Baedorf and his gas tank. I mentioned this a lot, but it's a fact. When you've got a big man on top of you and he's going to work, and the guy on bottom is trying to get the big man off you, it's going to expend your energy levels, and it's going to take a hit on your gas tank and your cardio. And I feel exactly the same about this fight as well. I think that the longer De Vries stays on top, the better it is for him, because the cardio will slowly be emptying for Baedorf. And I think the fight enters the second round in this fight. And I think as soon as the second round starts, I think Baedorf, if he is tired, I think De Vries goes straight in for a takedown again. And at this point, this is where I think De Vries will potentially finish him via submission. Now, what submission? Who knows? What tends to happen a lot with fighters that have been depleted in the cage and are looking tired is the fighter on top tends to pass to a position maybe in half guard or mount, and the fighter on bottom, just out of exhaustion, tends to give up the back, and then the rear naked choke's available there. So if you're really wanting a precise method of victory from me, I'm going to go with Philip De Vries to win via a rear naked choke. Ultimately, I do think he's going to submit him. I'm not sure what with. But I've got Philip De Vries to defeat Karol Baedorf via submission to retain the heavyweight champion. And that's all she wrote for the fight breakdown, guys. For the bets this week at KSW and UFC 229, don't forget to check out the premium bets from Newsome MMA and the membership options available too. And never hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or inquiries. Now, for the extremely quick Newsome MMA 2-minute plug. First of all, I'd like to talk about Concussion Pro 1, who are partnering Newsome MMA. Concussion Pro 1 is the world's first dedicated concussion supplement supporting brain health and performance. This product is honestly groundbreaking, and there isn't another supplement on the market like it. The unique formula that makes up Concussion Pro 1 has been developed and created by some of the world's most decorated sports scientists to help protect and support the brain and its performance. Approved by the UK Mixed Martial Arts Federation, Concussion Pro 1 provides some amazing support to the brain. It increases mental performance, faster recovery from injury, reduced inflammation post-impact, improved neural protection, and much more. With professional athletes such as Alexander Rakic, Mark Diakese, Scott Askham, Jose Shorty Torres using Concussion Pro 1, you can already see how vital this product is for not only MMA but for all combat sports. Find out more information by clicking on any of the banners on the Newsome MMA website or go to concussionpro1.com. Secondly, please check out the sponsors of Newsome MMA, which is CBD Life UK. I'm a great case study for CBD. In the MMA gambling world, people often talk about sweats and nerves as they're watching the fighter that they bet on fight. These feelings are absolutely real, and because of this I vape CBD to help relax me on fight night. And if I'm honest, I didn't think it would make much of a difference, but it really does, and I would honestly recommend it to anybody, especially MMA gamblers. You can access the offers from my sponsorship by clicking any of the banners on the Newsome MMA website, and you can also get 15% off your first order by using promo code Newsome MMA. And that's it from me, guys. There will be a UFC 229 breakdown coming out. It's being recorded on Monday. We've got co-host John back. We've also got special guest and UFC middleweight Tom Breeze joining us for the biggest card in the UFC of 2018. So we'll see you soon for that. Enjoy the fights at KSW 45. Thank you and goodbye.